Thank you, Brandy. I'm going to call this February 20th Planning Commission of the City of Watertown meeting to order. Would you please do the roll?
Yes, Stolly.
Here.
Case.
Here.
Spire.
Here.
Culhane.
Here.
Kokachek.
Here.
Elby.
Here.
Tate.
Here.
And Aletsky and Dargis Johnson are absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Wonderful. This time is reserved, well, actually, this is an invitation for anybody that wants to comment on anything that is not currently on the agenda. There will be time towards the end of the meeting to do that. Please let Brandy know. I don't think there's anybody here, and I don't know if anybody is signed on online, but if so, please message Brandy. I would accept a motion for approval of the agenda.
A motion to approve. Second.
Motion by Dolly, second by Spear. Any further discussion regarding the agenda? Any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. I would ask for approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Motion by Kays,
Second.
second by Kokachek.
Close enough.
Any changes, additions, comments regarding the January 23, 2025 minutes? Perfect. Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Regular agenda, 6A, consideration of ordinance number 25-2, Commercial Lake District. Please, Brandy, go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Liam. So this is the hard work that the CL committee has been working on for the past 10 months. So that group was able to look at the CL Lake Commercial District to make amendments to it so that it was usable. And what they have compiled, I think, is a great way to address what the issues were. And so basically, the existing CL Lake Commercial District, there are 3 properties, I believe, that are zoned that today. Because of takings and whatnot, we are leaving the existing CL properties as CL properties and then closing that district. With this amendment, we are also including to revert back to what the original CL district was, because when we made the amendments, which you'll see here, when we made these amendments of changing the uses from permitted, these uses from permitted to conditional uses, that was trying to be a quick fix to the CL district before we went into this overhaul. So then there will be 3 new CL districts created. This CL district is closed. Everybody that is zoned that today will utilize this ordinance. And then the new districts are, today we have them listed in there as CLA and CLP. I would suggest that we just do CL1 and CL2. CL1 will be lake adjacent and CL2 will still be proximity. But that way then we're just being consistent with our normal zoning designations. And then there will also be there's a overlay district, and that one is shown as CLX. Again, overlay districts, I mean, we can talk about that if we want to change that, but those aren't as structured, I guess, as their naming the naming system goes for that. So there is a map that our own Todd Kays put together as he was a part of the committee.
I could take a minute to explain it if you want.
I might,
Go ahead, Brandy, sorry.
yeah, if you want to go ahead, Todd, you go.
This map is just, it shows the existing zoning districts as they are within a half mile of the water's edge around Lake Compesca. And so you can see the orange areas, there's 3 of them, which Brandy previously referenced to as the areas that are currently zoned CL and would retain that CL zoning district use that's closed and those uses that are within it. If you see the blue areas, those are areas that are currently zoned I think it's C2, I believe. And then.
C3.
C3, excuse me.
Well, sorry, you're like darker blue is
Yeah,
C3.
dark blue is C3, and then there's kind of an aqua area, around area by the prop. That's zoned C2. And then you see that there's some industrial zone property over by the edge by the airport, and then an I2 zone property where the racetrack is, right? And so that just shows the existing. We're not saying that any of these C1, C2, the new zones are currently on there, but we're using this map as a reference of where I could make a subsequent request to rezone property. So if you see the yellow, that's supposed to represent areas adjacent to the lake under our proposed C1 zone, and the uses, and Randy can go through those uses, but that's where if I wanted to come in and ask to rezone to C1, it would have to be on one of those yellow areas. If I want to come and approach a C2 zoning, it would be the areas in green. You can see there's a lot of vacant areas or no colored areas on this map. And some of that it indicates it's either there's wetlands perhaps in some of those areas, or there's the golf courses, which are already, zoned residential and probably would not see a redevelopment effort on those properties. And then the other areas are things that are beyond. You can see the city limits line is that black line around the edge. And it doesn't make a lot of sense going out and identifying areas that aren't adjacent to the city limits because we can't annex those properties and we can't leapfrog annex. So if anybody wanted to do something different in that red area around the lake that's beyond what we've identified here, they're going to have to come to the county and city's joint jurisdiction board, and that board would have to decide whether or not they want to adopt commercial type use regulations in that area. Does that make sense?
Perfect. Thank you, Todd. Liam, do you want to see if, do you care? Does anyone have any questions about the map?
I think before we open the public hearing, does anybody have any questions for Randy?
Just about the map, but I was
Oh,
I
okay.
still need to continue.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Julie.
I
Missed
do
it.
have, I do have a question about the map. I think what you said was C1, but you meant CL1 and CL2.
I'm sorry, CL1 and CL, the A and the P are now in the 1 and the 2.
Thank you, just for clarification.
I'm sorry.
Yes, good catch.
This had several different iterations over the last 10 months, so I trip on my words every once in a while.
Yes, no, the map I think turned out great, and it makes sense too how the labeling is done, and with that boundary line for what is within a proximity of the lake. Because otherwise, then when you get outside of that boundary, then you would go back to utilizing C3, C2, C1 if you want to do commercial. But obviously, lake commercial is tailored towards the lake. So if there's no more questions with the map specifically, then I'll go on to explain the 2 new chapters, or the 3 new chapters for the CL district. So they have, the purpose is obviously promoting lake commercial businesses that are appropriate. We also acknowledge that Lake Kempesca, and these are only addressing Lake Kempesca at this time. If Lake Pelican, if we want to take that on in the future, that is a future project. Lake Kempesca is like 93% single-family residential districts and single-family homes. So that's where the sensitivity of making sure that there are cohesive and complementary development, because obviously a lake, it's nice to have some commercial development available as well. But with that being said, this zoning district is to preserve the lake and its residential nature, but then allow some opportunity for commercial growth. So we do have, and I see there's a little spelling definition. We'll have to get that amended. But the specific uses we defined, and these definitions are only applicable to the CL. So right here, we're looking at the CLP, or the CL2 it will be for the lake proximity commercial And so then we have what lake proximity is, and that's any property that does not directly abut the shoreline, but is located across the right-of-way from the lakefront properties and included in the boundary maps. And then the lake retail and service establishments, and that is to specifically be lake-oriented for retail and service establishments that we otherwise have defined in other districts. And then mixed-use structures. So we also did not include much for like apartments because that's residential. So if somebody wanted to put up an apartment building or a multifamily residential building, they would go the R3 route. And then this mixed-use structure, though, does allow for residential units on top of a commercial building because that is a development trend. And it's also nice to have living and working happening in the same structures. So then that is defined, and this is specifically just again to the CL districts. So this is a commercial building where the upper floors of the same structure are used for residential units. And then so all of the permitted uses and special permitted uses, which that's another thing too that we'll have to make sure to add that use there.
I was going to ask you, do we have a definition of special permitted use in the current regulations?
Carla, could you note that? And if we don't,
can just-
we probably don't.
I believe there's one in enabling legislation.
Yeah.
Or if not, I know Kyneton County has one as well.
Okay, yeah. Appreciate that. We will make sure that is in the definition section. So the special permitted use, if there is the in accordance with a section here, that is what makes it the special permitted use because there are design standards that have to be met if you want to use that use. Otherwise, if they do not have in accordance with, then they are permitted uses. So they have the lake retail and service establishments, restaurants in accordance with that section below here. Recreational use for public and private, and then religious institutions and mixed-use structures. So that also basically is allowing, if you are in proximity to the lake, within that district, that these are what would be allowed. And then there are specific standards for the restaurants, for the special permitted use provisions, and what the group felt that needed, like what makes a restaurant intrusive is the outdoor seating component, especially when it's adjacent to a residential property. So outdoor seating, all outdoor seating shall be prohibited within the required side yard setbacks of the primary structure, and establishments shall operate outdoor seating areas within the hours of 10 a.m. to 12 a.m. So obviously the committee had landed on those regulations for that use. And then they're consistent with the area and bulk requirements like other ordinances, and then the design requirements is also, this is taken from like the Gateway Overlay District or the Downtown Overlay District, just to create some consistencies. And then to also protect, and because, you know, when we get into design requirements, this is trying to protect the aesthetics, and then also including transitional yards, lighting, and then specifically then adding the outdoor music events. Just because with commercial activity, just trying to be sensitive because of the existing residential neighborhoods. This type of, I'll talk a little bit more here with so the outdoor music events, we thought about just doing outdoor events, but really it's when music's involved, because that's where you're getting you're getting the noise. So events utilizing a special alcoholic beverage license shall follow chapter or title 2. And then the outdoor music event events require a lake use special event permit issued by the Community Development Division. The annual limit on outdoor music events shall not exceed 4 events per calendar year. Additional events in excess of 4 in one calendar year shall be approved by the Board of Adjustment. Events must be concluded by 12 a.m. midnight on the day the event is held. So that we would create that permit. The lake use special event permit does not exist today. So if this ordinance is approved, then we will create that administratively. Again, then the boundary map is included in the ordinance there and referenced. And then, okay, so now that was where is the, so we have the closed district, that we had the proximity district, and then here's the lake adjacent commercial district. So this is where, again, if you compare to what the proximity and adjacent permitted and special permitted uses are, we get a little more stringent with the adjacent, but then also understanding that to have commercial activities on the lake that you can access is also, that's the highest and best use for the property if it is to be used commercially. So again, we have our definitions, and then the permitted and special permitted uses are lake retail and service establishments, restaurants in accordance with the section below, recreational use for public, religious institutions, and mixed-use structures in accordance with 21.3, which that needs to be,
Do we need to add that?
well, honestly, for sure, if we do any standards, but we did not discuss any standards in the committee.
I thought we had talked about allowing mixed-use structures on either on the water or across the road.
Yeah,
And so,
but we didn't have any design standards, so we can just strike that, because then what I added it as reserved, that if in the future we want to,
so we have it on the CLA, but not the CLP?
or one. So this is now CL1 that we're looking at, but we do allow it in CL2. We have it without design standards. So this was just a typo.
So
The
that's what-
design requirements 21.3.007 would still apply to all uses though, right?
Yes.
So, excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So, under the
Carla,
lake,
did you
the
get that?
adjacent, we're saying that I have mixed-use structures in adjacent with 21.3.005, and I can still do mixed uses in the proximity area, but there's no standards.
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I had that understood.
Sorry, not no standards, just no additional standards beyond the design
Right,
standards. for the
they're not in addition to
In addition
the-
to, yep.
Right.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you.
So yeah, then the restaurants have the special permitted use provisions, and then the same design standards. There's not a lot of difference between the proximity, just a few less,
There's just one less use from between on the water and off the water, and that's a private recreation facility.
yeah. And then the kind of inventive way to protect, or I guess bring to light, the major what the committee felt is are more intrusive uses, and so that there were ways that the CL district could be approved without the reservation that the uses as such as a bar, tavern, or hotel or motel. Those are what the committee felt were the most intrusive to the Lake Commercial District. So what we did is we created the CLX, the Lake Commercial Overlay District, and this will basically be, overlay districts can be implemented in different ways, where like the Gateway Overlay District that we have out by the Hobby Lobby development, Willow Creek, East Park, that is established by boundaries. So anything that is platted within those boundaries have to follow that Gateway Overlay District. This one is actually more of a compound where there's no set boundaries, but it's available to be applied for and layered in essence. So if a property is zoned CL1 and they are a restaurant, and then they get that zoning designation, Or if they do it at the same time and they say, I want to have a restaurant, bar, tavern. So depending on their location, they can apply for their CL designation, and then they can apply for the CLX for the overlay, which would allow them to be able to do the bar. If somebody is just wanting to create a gym, we'll use that, then they don't need the overlay. And so it's not just, it includes also the hotel and motel. And this way, then it allows transparency, and it eliminates the what if to the planning commission and the city council of, okay, they're saying that it's gonna be just a restaurant, but what if they do a bar? Obviously, there's licenses that need to be approved, but then that way it's just it's just being more transparent.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Go ahead.
We had talked about the idea that you can see that the bar, tavern, and motel hotel is also a special permitted use. And it's not a conditional use common the way we would see bars and taverns in other commercial zones. And the reason for that is that if I have to go through the rezoning to make it, then we shouldn't have to hear that again 2 weeks later and have a second bloodletting in the event that the rezoning goes through. And so that's part of the purpose for the permitted or special permitted uses that are listed there. And then we also talked about that there may be a time in the future where somebody wants to take some risk venture capital and, you know what, maybe build a hotel, or maybe build it could be a resort, I mean, whatever you want to call it. Where people would stay and still have access to the lake. Well, if they can come in and get the property zoned to CL1 or CL2, and then they say, but we want to put a motel here, we're also going to ask for the CLX at the same time, so for the hotel motel, which may also include a bar tavern inside of that. And this way, everybody knows going into a public hearing on the rezoning, what they can expect to get. So if I'm going to be coming and I want to do something on the water, I know that when I come and ask the planning commission and the city council for that rezoning, the public is going to be aware that there are only 5 uses that could happen there. A restaurant without booze, a church, a public park, maybe a business that sells kayaks, and then 4 houses, 4 apartments on top, whatever. Those are the things that you're going to see. So the public knows that it's not the wild, wild west. It's not the whole litany of uses that are currently in the existing CL closed district. And so it's a little bit more restrictive, but it's also more finite from the perspective that, as Brandy said, it's more transparent. Everybody knows. Now, if I'm coming in and I'm going to say, I want to do this, but I have the intention of maybe opening up a bar and tavern in that restaurant, I'm going to do this for 2 years to see if it works by itself, prove that I can be a good neighbor to my neighbors. Now, the only thing that's going to change is I might have beer along with those 4 music events at my KFC that I have out there. Then that maybe would, trust is then built with the neighborhood, showing that we can make the next step to that more. We had a lot of crosstalk on it. We're not in 100% agreement, but that's what consensus does. But this is what the agreement that we came up with. And so,
Brandy and Todd, though, I want to clarify something. They can apply for the overlay at the same time.
Yes.
Okay, so it's 1 meeting, not 2 meetings. There's no time limit in between.
no,
Okay.
but again, some of these uses might take just a simple getting it in the door, proving them a good neighbor to come back later to show. And I think that's where there's a lot of, some people are, we're okay, we want some commercial uses out there, we just want to make sure that you're going to be a good neighbor.
Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
One big difference between this and a conditional use would be in that process of when they do come back and ask for that at a later date, instead of it just being something that is brought as a conditional use to the board, because it's an overlay, it would go back to the plan commission at that time to add the overlay, and then on to the city council to ratify that.
So there's more opportunities for public comment.
Correct.
And again, that it would be public noticed and adjacent landowner letters sent out and whatnot, so.
That's a pretty creative solution. That's, nice job. Anything else, Brandy?
Just the chart, there's just a few changes to the chart that's included in this ordinance amendment too. So yeah, and it's increased the minimum requirements there. Other than that, no, I'll stand by if there's any questions, but also I need to give a shout out to Carla because I don't think I said that at the beginning, but she managed this committee and really did a bulk of putting this ordinance together. Others on the committee were Todd Kays, Lynn Jurens was the kind of the chair of it. Bonnie Aletsky, okay. And Blake Dolly, because I wasn't a part of this committee, so actually I should have had Kyle Peters
Mike Danforth.
and Mike Danforth. Sorry, that I didn't have that planned of actually making all the acknowledgement of the committee. But yeah, no, as far as Carla, I appreciate all her work on this, so I wanted to at least give credit there. So, and everyone else for participating in it. And what I'm happy to see is that, what we had for the CL district, the thing, when people would apply for utilizing it, they were not passing, because there was the reservations of what it could be for the uses that were available. So I like that that there was the deep dive and to look into what could make the CL usable. So, and this is where the committee landed, and that is what we are bringing forward for action.
Wonderful. Before I open the public hearing, is there any other questions for staff? Hearing none, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone to speak on behalf of or against this ordinance? I don't see anybody in the room other than the mayor. You're not going to speak, Mayor? Okay, anybody online? Going once, twice, 3 times. I will close the public hearing and ask for a motion in the affirmative and then open discussion.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I would like to make a motion to approve the ordinance number 2502 with the inclusion of the amendments that were discussed as far as staff, as far as some of the little typos and definitions that need to be added.
And yeah, and the titles is the main.
Motion by Kays. Do we have a second?
That was with the adjustment to CL1 and 2.
Yes, adjusting, calling it CL1, CL2 versus CLA and CLP.
I second that.
Second by Dolly. Any further discussion?
I just want to say that, 10 months ago when we started this, I didn't know 4 months in if we were ever going to get this far. And all the members of the committee, we argued, we took opposite sides on a lot of things, and we finally came to something that we had general consensus on. And I think it's a better looking car in the garage than what somebody might try to drive this one where they weren't going to drive the other one. And I do want to thank Carla too for all of her work in this. She helped keep the cats from running stray.
Yeah, and if there was ever sausage making, this is it, right? So, Brandy, I did have one question, and now I'm blanking on it. Oh, was there any comment, or maybe Commissioner Kays, was there any comment from any of the stakeholders that we sort of normally hear from on these issues, Ikes or Lake Compesca Watershed Project District? That's kind of what comes to mind.
Blake, we had talked, there were some general conversations on the periphery regarding water quality and conservation issues. And I think we were very clear in communicating with them that becomes a subsequent issue. It's a much larger issue than how the land is used right there. Those are conversation that needs to be happening with the Corps, with the county, and talking about land uses that would impact that. That was my.
Yeah, and that was the stance I think Councilman Danforth took as well, that we need to have a more community-wide holistic look at that.
So that's hopefully subsequent upcoming, maybe not within our purview, but to an extent it does. Okay, but I just wanted to make sure that that they had been heard, or if there was concerns that those were communicated. Obviously, they're not here today, but.
The things that we did, account for as much as we could there in terms of the map, Todd pointed out earlier that there was some areas that were kind of outlined as non-development areas. Things were low-lying water areas. We would not encourage, of course, commercial development in those places. And then additionally, in the design criteria, keeping transitional yards and more green space, which helps preserve some of that aesthetic as well.
Mr. Chair, the only thing that we also do need to acknowledge that we will probably have to come back at some point in time in the future to address the comprehensive land use plan to incorporate a connection to this regulatory scheme that we've developed.
Understood. Well, we can probably get that scheduled. Any other? Yeah, add to the pile. Any further discussion regarding the motion?
I would just add one more thing, just in relation to the design requirements that are outlined here in this district, because this will come up, especially as requests come in, about being adjacent to residential properties. And if you take a look back at what we've done in other areas of the community as a whole, where we've got transitional zoning, or we've got these types of commercial uses immediately adjacent to residential, the requirements here for the design requirements for anybody to build any of these listed permitted uses far exceed anything we've done anywhere else in town. So we've really tried to protect the neighborhood while balancing the need to account for this commercial use.
Perfect. Thank you for that comment and comments, both Commissioner Dolly and Kays. You breathed like you wanted to say something, Brandy.
I know. I just want to touch on the signage just because that was brought up as a comment with what we're proposing. So signage will be handled like it is in the institutional uses, like churches or schools within a residential district. And the question about electronic message center was brought up. And we, as far as the committee goes, I don't believe there was no prohibition against them. The main discussion point was having, not having billboard or signage on the lake side, like the off-street, the on-premise freestanding signs. And so I just wanted to address that. If people had major concerns about electronic message centers, I just wanted to be upfront about that. Obviously, you see a lot of churches now that they are converting to the electronic message center. It has to be on-premise advertising, so it's not a billboard. But just wanted to address that.
Go ahead.
We did talk about being able to put a side of the property. So if I'm running a restaurant bar and I'm driving by the lake, they can say, hey, it's Todd's place or whatever.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, wonderful. Any other discussion regarding the motion? Perfect, thank you. Very robust discussion, very robust work from the committee. Not easy stuff, so I appreciate staff's involvement, appreciate the committee members' involvement. Looks like a pretty good project or product. With that, I will ask for a roll call vote. Brandy?
All right. Colleen,
Yes.
Spire,
Yes.
Kakachek,
Yes.
Kays,
Yes.
Albee,
Yes.
Dolly,
Yes.
Tate.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. This is the time for open public comment. Mayor, do you have it to say anything? Nope. Okay, good. Nobody online has anything to say anything?
No, I don't think anyone's on.
New business,
None that I have.
old business.
None.
We probably don't need an executive session, so we are adjourned.
All right. Thank you, guys. Enjoy the warmer weather.